I want to thank you all for being up so early, even bearing the rain and coming and joining us today. I could barely sleep last night. I was so eager and excited for today. This feels like it's been a year in the making, this meeting, this room where you're sitting in. So this is really a big day for us. We, of course, want to value your time, so we've got about 90 minutes together. I want to be very clear about what we're trying to accomplish today. This is a long effort. It's a long haul, but just for today, our goals are really the three that you see up behind me. So I want you to think about, as we go through the day, are you getting these questions answered? Do you understand this thing that we're calling the commit partnership and really what holds it together? Do you understand the role that a lot of you represent nonprofits, the role that nonprofits can play within this partnership and that we really need you to play within the partnership? And finally, understand how you can take some immediate steps today to join the partnership. This is an open invitation today. We want to make sure that there's clarity. That's the goal more than anything for today. All right, and there's our agenda. So we're going to start a little bit about this notion of collective impact, which a lot of you may have heard before. The reason why I love speaking with nonprofits is because you inherently get this idea that it takes a village, right? That it's not just going to be our schools. It's not just going to be our teachers that help ensure that every child has a chance to succeed in our community. It's going to take all of us. And so many of your services, your heroic efforts every day help fill those gaps for families and for kids. So when we think about education in Dallas County, we really think about it as this continuum, from early childhood all the way through to workforce. So in this first part of the continuum, as we think about our village, I really want you to kind of take your organizational hat off for the next 90 minutes and put your community hat on, right? Everything that we're going to talk about today is about not specific organizations, but about us collectively as a community. Schools, nonprofits, parents, this entire boat, right? So, how are we doing as a village? In early childhood, we have about 230,000 kids that live in Dallas County. And this is just one example, but about only 1 in 7 of our early childhood facilities have received any type of quality rating. In grades 4 through 12, only 1 in 3 of our students read at a level that puts them on track for college by the 4th grade. And then towards the end, as they transition away from high school into what comes next, only about 13% of students are completing high school ready to succeed in college. That's overall. And when we look at those numbers a little bit closer, it's only about 4% of African American and Hispanic students in Dallas County. These are numbers that as a village, we're trying to look at and understand. And then finally, when you look at those numbers, we look at higher ed and workforce towards the end, only about 50% of our higher ed students are completing their degrees, in large part perhaps because of readiness rates that we see. A lot of you have heard this before, so I just wanted to catch us back up, think about ourselves as a village, and ask, how are we doing in terms of plugging these leaks, right? We want to stop some of these leaks at critical points and do it as an entire community. Now, the good news is we have a lot of resources, you being a key part of that in our community. We have 1,500 early childhood centers. We have hundreds of nonprofits. We have thousands of businesses. We have 15 school districts. We have hundreds of philanthropic partners, right, like Brent, CFT, and a number of private resources we have in this community. And we have 21 higher ed institutions. So we have all of these incredible assets. I used to teach in rural North Carolina when I taught. We would have dreamed to have had this kind of support in our own backyard. So as we look at the village and we look at what constitutes the village, there's a key question that we're really asking, which is when we look at those results, when we look at the resources that we collectively have, how are we operating? Not as individual organizations, but collectively, right? Whenever we say we, we're talking about the entirety of our community. So I'm going to ask you to go through this exercise with me, and this is a sincere question, because I want you to be thinking about Where are we right now? So if we think about this as kind of a continuum, are we operating in a state of kind of disorder and confusion? So if you look at the arrows, right, are we all kind of moving in our own distinct directions where, there might be some pockets of excellence, but they're really even hard to find? Is that where we're at as a community? Are we in isolation, where again, the arrows are kind of going in different directions, everyone for everything, right? So there are individual pockets of excellence, but they're disconnected from each other. Is that where we are? Are we aligned? Are we all moving towards some shared vision that we can all as a community have some sense of what's our true north? Where are we trying to get to as a community? Do we see some random acts of partnership taking place towards some shared outcomes? Or are we at a state of collective impact, where the arrows aren't just moving in the same direction, but they're really reinforcing, right? Where we're holding each other accountable, where we know exactly what we're responsible for accomplishing and what the goals are for what we're doing. And we start to see time, talent, and treasure all moving towards some shared outcomes. So I'm going to ask you to take about 60 seconds and turn to someone next to you and just talk. Where do you think we are? Which of those arrows do you think describes our community currently? Okay? Go ahead. Sorry to cut you off real quick. Just a sense check. Just a sense check. In your conversations with each other, show of hands. How many folks feel like we're in a state of disorder and confusion? Few hands. There's no right or wrong answer. And by the way, these are not necessarily easy categories to bucket. And we all have our own vision into where we are. How many people think there's some isolation? A lot of hands. How about alignment? Any folks see that? A few. Some areas right here. Okay. And what about collective impact? Anybody? Oh, Sky gave me. Good. All right. Look, obviously, what we're trying to get to, and I'll turn it over to Todd in just a second, is to move in this direction as a community. And it's going to take time, and it's going to be messy, and we're very upfront and honest about that. But the one thing that's clear is it's going to take all of us, because those arrows don't line up unless we all start to embrace a common language, some common goals. And that's a huge part. When we zoom out, that's a huge part, entirely so, what Commit is trying to do in the field of education in our community. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Todd Williams, our Executive Director, to talk a little bit now more specifically about this is the direction that we want to move towards collective impact. What is Commit? What's the partnership? And how exactly is that going to happen?
Thanks, Jonathan. I appreciate it.